What's up? Do you have stuff to do you just don't feel like doing? Do you have a lot on your plate? Maybe, I don't know, some things coming up in the future that are just difficult to even think about and comprehend, or just a lot every day? Well, you're in luck. Today we're going to talk about how to deal with stuff. This is the Existential Stoic Podcast. I'm Dan, here, buddy Randy. What's up, Randy?
Yeah, Danny.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I don't know. We've both been dealing with a lot of stuff. We'll say that.
Or at least trying.
Trying to deal
Trying
with
their
it.
best. Yeah. I don't know how to deal with stuff. I'm pretty lost in this area recently.
You know what's weird too? I notice about myself. I'm pretty positive this is also true about you, knowing you as long as I have. Is like I feel like um, I know that my own sense of my own value is contingent on what I'm doing, and it's weird because I don't really associate it with like what I'm earning or anything, but just like what I'm actually doing and accomplishing each day, which is a weird way I know to look at it. Um, and so like part of me likes being busy because like I feel like I have value in the world. I'm doing things, real things, stuff like that. But then it's also the case that that mindset also pushes you to do so much into like almost like work, well, into probably workaholism or something like that. Yeah. And then not take breaks and not manage your time well with everything else in your life. And so it becomes a real struggle to like balance all these things. Yeah,
Yeah. I
that's
feel like I
me.
need to start going to Workaholics Anonymous meetings or something like that.
They need that, right?
Because it is. Because I'm the same way. If I stop working, well, okay. So there was this book that I read recently. Yeah, there was this book I read recently called Sweet Bean Paste. And it kind of had like the way that it was presented. It had this like Ayn Rand vibe to it, where it's like a story, and at the end she just downloads her whole like she dumps her whole like manifesto on you. And so I mean, the book was like a cute little tale, and at the end, the author just dumps their whole manifesto on you. And it was basically like, you know, essentially, one person thought that like the the meaning of life was like what you can contribute, which is like where we are. If we're working, we feel like a meaningful part of society, like we're doing something and yada yada.
Which, to
But
be
then,
fair, this is something that society's told people for a very long time. So it's not like
yeah,
this is not out of
yeah.
nowhere.
But like the interesting thing is the story is about these people with leprosy back in a time when like they couldn't be part of normal society, so they couldn't contribute to society. So like they found that in fact the meaning of life was like what you experience, what you see, what you feel, what you hear, all those things. And that's actually like the meaning of life. And it made me think for a little bit because I was like, yeah, I do
Huh.
put a lot of my meaning to what I actually do as opposed to my experience.
So your experiences, yeah, that's funny because that's very in line with like Camus. I would argue Taoism. I mean, a lot of philosophies think that it's not about what we accomplish, but about, and that's what I was gonna say. That's what I was laughing before because like I say out loud these things about like what I think related to like my production and stuff and what I'm doing. And the funny thing is like from a philosophical standpoint, I don't even believe that either. That's the weird part. Like I also like I guess, but that's like that break of intellectual and like practical, where like
Hmm.
theoretically I know XYZ is the case, or I believe XYZ is the case, I should say. But in practice, I don't necessarily act that way. And I think that's the hard part too, is like aligning those is difficult. Because it's like I also don't want to do nothing. You
Hmm.
know? It's like,
Well, you make a good point because I struggle with this all the time. How it's like if I don't hold myself up to a very high standard, I probably won't get anything done. Like I compare myself with people who are very, very good at what they do, and I want to get to that level. But then at the same time, I know that like my life is going to be completely mediocre and like inconsequential when it comes down to it. So it's like, how do you how do
well,
you
that's the
juggle
funny
that
thing though,
type of
because like,
stuff?
what's funny is like, and this is one of the things I do love about like, is like all lives at the end of the day are functionally equivalent. Because you lived, you had some experience, you die. I mean, that's it. And like, no matter what you accomplish, one, it might be interpreted differently after you die. You have no way to guarantee anything. You don't know what's going to happen to your legacy. Like, especially when you talk about like technology and stuff, like you could you could do something amazing in your life, and literally the year after you die, something new comes along that totally wipes it out. It's arbitrary and obsolete, and nobody thinks about it again.
Hmm.
Right? And we can
Yeah.
look back at examples of that. It's like,
Or the opposite, you could be total deject, like degenerate your whole life, and then after you die, become popular, like all the artists that happened to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they were like, yeah, they were broke, wandering around just painting stuff for like nothing, just
Hmm.
trying to get supplies. And then after the fact, their stuff's selling for hundreds of millions. And it's like, okay, I mean, they're in history, but how does
I
that
mean,
affect
heck, look
them?
at Jesus. He only had 12 people that liked him, and then after he dies, the whole
Look at his
world.
impact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
No, but that is the funny thing, it's like at the same time, we don't know what our legacy is going to be. Oh, I moved too much. We we don't know what our legacy is going to be. We don't know what's going to happen with it. So it's like, it makes it very hard to kind of like, I think, even though we want to think in this way of like what I produce is what my value is, it really doesn't amount to that. And I think we talked about this before when we talked about regret and like death. And, I think being aware of that too, like our own deaths is important because, what am I going to look back and say on my life? Am I going to look back and say, like, I wish I did more of that stuff, or I wish I spent more time with people, or I wish I did, you know,
That's such a hard one because, like, even though, like, I was thinking about this last week. I was like, if I died, what would I say about myself? And I was like, well, he died doing what he loved. Like but at the same, that's not my experience of life, though. My
yeah,
experience of life is just not like I can't get there.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's yeah.
It is really weird, isn't it? When you think about it
Hmm.
that way too, because yeah, and it's funny too, because like as I've gotten older too, and like I guess been more introspective of myself, like I also realized things about myself that like I was acting contrary to in my youth. Like I am introverted a lot. Like I don't mind talking to people and I like people, but I don't really like want to be that involved and stuff. So I noticed that more, and that's, it is weird. It's very hard because like I look back and I wonder like, should I be more like that person that was like when I was younger? But that's not really me. So it's like no. But at the same time, like, am I missing out on things? I don't know because if they
Uh,
don't matter to me, how could I be missing out on them? But like,
dude, I got so okay. I didn't get so angry, but I was just like, "Ugh," earlier today because I was thinking about this. And I was like, when I was a kid, I was mocked incessantly because I was fat and because I was a nerd. Like that was just
and now
like
everybody loves
nonstop.
nerds.
Dude, yeah, now everybody freaking loves nerds and everybody's fat and it's socially acceptable. And I was like, what is this BS? Like
You
30
didn't
years
have to change
ago, 30,
anything.
40 years ago, not cool. But nowadays is totally fine. Like clearly I was born 40 years too early or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Being born
Yeah.
before your time, that happens. They
Hmm.
say a lot about great people, though. They're born before their time.
Mm. Yeah. Well,
We know it's crazy too, because I look
excuse me.
back, like I think too of like, like the philosophers I really like, for instance, like Nietzsche, like his life, for all intents and purposes, I think was horrible.
Yeah,
Like
right.
no one,
Especially the end when he was like
oh
dying of
God.
syphilis and
And like
shit and all
11
in
years, it
pain
was
all the
like,
time.
yeah, it was like
Yeah.
10 or 11 years of basically out of it while like his sister's propping him up for pictures with Nazis and stuff. Like horrible. Yeah, dude, totally horrible. And like, yeah, and he went from like, I mean, he was ill his whole life because of syphilis. I mean, just on his own, but he just was like had this drive to put out this philosophy that ultimately, yeah, it did matter, which is interesting that it even did matter. I mean, it's kind of that is fascinating in and of itself that it actually did like stick and people still talk about him and write about him. But like, and I guess, at the same time, it's like that did in his situation that gave his life purpose. And I think that's also what it comes down to is, you know, giving our lives that purpose. Because it's funny, because like Camus even says like all that matters is like, the experiences we have, this and that, maximizing experiences. But he also won the Nobel Prize. He also wrote, had the impulse to write his philosophy down, to publish it. He was a very gifted writer. So I mean, like he still clearly thought that getting things done was also mattered, right? I mean, this is that hard sort of line to walk, I
Mm,
think.
yeah. I'm really impressed by like the prolific writers, like the people who just write these like giant tomes and just like multiple of them and
Yeah.
like Robert Jordan, Wheel of Time, like
Oh
holy
God,
cow, that
yeah.
must have been like
Well, he's
yeah.
another interesting case too, right? Because he was sick. And, that's why there was such lengthy time sometimes between his books. He didn't even get to finish it.
Hmm.
I mean, he tried his best. Like,
Yeah.
I think I had read that he was trying to publish like a final book that was going to be like 2,800 pages just to wrap it up. But like, but that's when you look back on his life amounted to, now granted, obviously his life had more because he had family, he had people that he loved and all. But like, he had this like amount of work though, that's what people look at. And I think maybe that's a mistake we make of looking at people's work is defining them. I don't know.
Probably. Well, because it's only one aspect of you. You know, you have your relationships, you have your physical health, your spirituality, all this different stuff, and it's
But I think too in this
but it's hard
modern,
to balance. Like I don't know,
yeah.
I don't believe in this whole concept of balance.
We
And
know what it is.
I'm tired of people telling other people how their lives should be lived. Like it's just
Yeah,
ridiculous.
it
You
is
know, who's to
ridiculous.
like where if they're correct, where's the freaking manual? You know?
Yeah. Well, no, exactly. If they were correct, there would be a manual. And also they'd be happy.
Yeah.
But, it is funny though, too, because that's the problem. There is no manual. I think we also live especially now, like the world's more commoditized now than ever. Like everything is valued, right? Based on a monetary value. And I think that's also why we see like we put so much emphasis on what we achieve and do because that normally translates to some sort of value, either in literal money or in status or, expertise, being recognized as an expert that will then lead to money. I
Yeah.
think that maybe that's part of it too. Because
Yeah.
a lot of people don't do stuff just to do it, like anymore. I try to.
It's
There's lots
hard
of things
to.
I try to do, and I love doing stuff just to do it. But like,
Dude, I'm terrible at hobbies right now. Like I can't even make time in a day to play video games or to like paint like my hobbies. I can't
yeah,
even make time in the day to do my hobbies.
no,
It's
it's really
crazy.
hard. It is. It is finding that
Yeah.
time for anything. It's like next to impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. You
Yeah.
don't know. There might not be an answer. That's the problem.
Probably not. What was the question?
I don't remember. Oh, how to do stuff or when,
Oh yeah, how to
oh,
deal with stuff.
how to deal with stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
One day at a time. I've been struggling recently with like just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I think because I'm trying to take on too much at a time. Like just remembering it's one day at a time and that's all I can ever do.
What's been killing me recently is it, like we've been doing the programming thing and it's been going great, but I still kept my other job part-time because of health insurance and stuff. And I also still, there's very small aspects of it that I still like, and that's fine. But like I just realized the other day, like I have that coming up too this next week starting again, and I was like ugh, dreading it because it's like just like the time that I have to give to it is like I don't really want to, you know what I mean? And like, and then it's
Yeah.
like at the same time, it's like you don't want to do terrible job either because it's like ugh, but like you know,
Hmm.
bare minimum
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's another interesting thing is like like I know that I do. I think you do too. Is like we kind of take pride in doing a good job at what we do.
Yeah, even when I hate it.
Yeah. And like, but that's not it's not a rule. Like you don't actually have to do that.
No, and a lot of
And
people don't.
yeah, a
They
lot
do
of
the
people
bare
don't. And
minimum.
I'm just like, how do you do that? Like, I mean, I just think back to like playing games. Like the whole time I play games, it's like you try to win or else you don't have fun. Like
Yeah,
that's basically the game. You win or you don't enjoy it. And it's like other people just play for playing. What?
yeah. And it's hard too, because I think no matter what you do, no matter how much time you put in, like there is still that factor of luck, chance, time, just the time that you exist in opportunity. Like things just happen sometimes to certain people and not others. And there's really no reason. Like, I was thinking about this the other day too. Like you look at like anything, but we'll take musicians, for instance, right? Of all the musicians that make it, there's probably at least an equal number that were equally as good that existed at the exact same time that they were that just didn't, for whatever reason, just didn't make
Hmm.
it. And I think that's true of so many things. So like that's also the hard part is like you can put in all this effort and still nothing happens from it.
Well, I think it was in the Mark Manson's book about with fuck on the cover, where he was talking about Metallica and Megadeth. So like Metallica, right before they became famous, they kicked out one guy, and that was the guy who started Megadeth. And even though they both were pretty successful. I mean, Metallica was much more successful, but even Megadeth was very successful,
Yeah, they
but it
weren't.
was never good enough because it wasn't Metallica. But then there's the opposite scenario of that with like the Beatles. Right before they became famous, they kicked out Pete Best, and he went on to just live kind of an ordinary life, family, all that stuff. But he got a lot out of it, and he's like, you know what? If I would have gone with them, I probably wouldn't have gotten all this stuff. And so it kind of comes down to the mindset of, are you going to enjoy whatever journey you have to do, or are you just going to be pissed off that you weren't in
Well, I
Metallica
think
or
this
the
is the
Beatles?
problem, right? I think is if you're constantly comparing yourselves to externals, you're going to be pissed off and miserable because there's always going to look, everything you do, you could be and you could be the best. There's still going to be somebody that comes along that's better later. Like you're never going to be the best forever. So even if you're the best now, it doesn't matter, you know? Even if you have the most now, it doesn't matter. Somebody's going to come along and have more than you. But more often than not, right? We look around and there's always going to be people that have more that are better off. So I think, yeah, I think you have to just look at your own life and find value in it, no matter what it is. And it's tricky. And I feel like I get there sometimes. There's days where I do feel that. Like I do feel very happy and grateful for where I am and what I have. But then they go away.
I know that's the darn thing is it's never solves for good. It's just a
No, I wish it
temporary
was,
thing
I
when you
know.
get it.
Maybe we'll get there though. If we do this for enough years.
We're just see it's never worked before, but maybe this time.
If we just keep doing it. I don't know. I meant if we kept like having these talks, reflecting on
Yeah,
these things, eventually, maybe we'll
we'll,
get there, you
we'll
know? It's
get
a
closer.
lifelong
I
journey.
think we get closer.
But maybe this time.
But maybe this time.
Maybe I'm
Yeah,
different
I
and
know,
it'll
right?
work out for me this
Maybe you're
time.
delusional.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny
Yep.
too? I've heard that too, where they say like, what was the statistic? It was like most people that are like happy are like deluding themselves because they tend to be more like optimistic,
Hmm.
positive, like, but not for
Yeah.
any good reasons. And I think
Yeah.
there's truth to that, like of just kind of
Well,
like,
like they talk about survival. And so like in order to survive back before modern society, like you had to be kind of not an optimist because you
yeah,
had to be like looking over your shoulder to make sure that some like crazy animal or person didn't murder you. And you probably weren't happy like, hey, life's great all the time. But now you can do whatever. So like probably even though, you know, not everybody survived from back then, but there was a spread of people from like all the way happy to all the way like not happy. And
yeah,
now we're just stuck with it because life's so easy. So the people who are happy all the time, they just kind of lucked out.
yeah. It is funny. I don't know. Life's weird. It's hard and there's no playbook.
No, definitely not.
So
That
there, I
was a good
guess,
chat.
yeah, it was a good chat. There you have it. How to deal with stuff. Although I don't know if we answered. Well, I guess we did in kind of a roundabout way that focused mostly on the psychological, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll
just be
see.
delusional.
Yeah, it's pretend like you're happy, and eventually you'll get
Yeah,
there. Fake it till you make it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Uh, anyway, if you did enjoy this episode, check us out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Please like, share, subscribe. It helps us out a lot. Leave a review, even that'd be awesome, especially a positive one. We'll be back later this week with another episode. Until then, though, later, Randy.
Later, Danny.